and our Redeemer. Amen. Now, after the Lord's Prayer, this may be the most commonly uttered prayer by Christians in our society. Words uttered to God in moments of pressing urgency when every other avenue has been tried and failed, when nerves of steel have been dissolved into anxious mush. Our ability to speak is reduced to this simple utterance: Dear God, please help me find my keys. Now, thank you. Now, we all know that keys only disappear when you know you put them right here. And keys only disappear when you're about to be embarrassingly late to something that will affect not only your own future, but the future conceivably of the free world itself, which only leads to the logical conclusion that the disappearance of keys is the work of the cosmic forces of evil, to which God is opposed and will fight on the battlefield of key recovery if only God is called upon to such an heroic act. And so for those of us who might not even think to pray in any circumstance, in these particular moments of most profound panic, we are more apt than ever to get down on our figurative knees and call upon our Creator. Now, given our tendency to call upon a higher power for help in times of key loss, we consider today a great philosophical riddle that I just made up this week. You ready for this great riddle? The riddle is, when God loses God's keys, to whom does God call upon for help? Now, I ask this question today because we find God in a veritable lost keys situation in the parables that Jesus tells today. These are the lost and found parables. The first parable compares God to a shepherd who has 100 sheep, but God loses one of those sheep. And the shepherd is so concerned about the one lost sheep that he is willing to leave the 99 sheep by themselves in the wilderness among the wild beasts to go search after that one lost sheep. The second parable compares God to a woman who has 10 silver coins, and again she loses one of those coins. Panicked, she lights a lamp, and she cleans the entire house and combs every corner until she finds that one lost coin. And Jesus says that's what it's like when one of us is lost to God. That God is willing to go to heroic lengths to risk everything, to search everywhere just to find one of us who has wandered off. Now, of these two parables, it is easier for me to relate to the parable about the lost coin because while I've never shepherded sheep, I do lose little things in my house all the time, and I ransack my house about once a week searching for some little thing. So I understand the frantic panic of searching for something someone lost. But in this parable, you're not really supposed to identify with that frantic woman searching for her lost coin. In this parable, you are the coin, lying oblivious in the carpet under a coffee table. Once you thought yourself relatively insignificant in light of the woman's great collection of coins and other assorted currency, and having fallen away from her presence, you have resigned yourself to the assumption that one day you may be absently sucked up into a vacuum, or at best swept up during spring cleaning amidst the rest of life's disposables. But soon after your misplacement, you notice a flurry A great cleaning effort has begun. The woman's eyes are combing every surface. Her hands reach into every pocket. Her ears listen to the shaking of every handbag, and her knees even fall to the floor as her search slows to a careful crawl. And at some point, it starts to dawn on you that she has spent these many anxious hours searching for you. A thought that is confirmed by the relieved smile she flashes when she finally spots your glint under the table. And she reaches for you, and she turns you over in her hands for a period of time that indicates that this is more than just a casual pickup. And the parable says that she is so happy to find you, that she calls all of her friends and family together for a big party, all this fuss just because she has found you. That, Jesus says, is what it's like to be found by God. It's a beautiful image. But what does it look like in our everyday lives as human beings and not coins to be found by God? Well, there are a few models out there, right? One might imagine one of those revival church services with that sermon that is so full of truth and conviction that you feel compelled to march yourself up the aisle of that church with your hands in the air and tears streaming down your cheeks, kneel at the altar and publicly give your life to Jesus Christ. That is one way to be found by God. Or there's the biblical image of Paul on his way to Damascus, when he's blinded by a bright light and he falls to the ground and he hears the words of Jesus Christ himself come to convince him that he should give his whole life to the gospel. That's another way to be found by God. But many people in this world don't experience God as flashes of light. Many secular folks among us may be more creeped out than inspired by emotional and physical displays of worship. So are they all, we all, just doomed to roam the world, to never be found and carried home on the shoulders of our shepherd? Absolutely not. Because if God is as frantic and desperate for us as Jesus says, God is using every possible tool, search and rescue dogs, night vision goggles, all to find precious, valuable you. And at some point, it only makes sense that God might even appeal to someone for help. Which brings us back to our great riddle. When God loses God's keys, to whom does God call out for help? Well, here is my theory. I am convinced that when God loses something, someone precious, God calls out for our help. God calls out to the people and communities God created to help find God's lost ones. And I am convinced of this because I have seen with my eyes God using us to find each other. I have seen God using a stranger's kind words to find a lost soul. I have seen God using churches and communities like AA and Al-Anon and Gay Straight Alliances and living rooms full of cross-stitching ladies, all to find lost souls. To lead people into relationship with God, to lead people to lay down pride and prejudice, to be in God's presence, to live and love in God's direction. I have seen it. So, when God loses God's coins, or keys, or sheep, when God loses her precious children, I believe, God calls out to us for help. Now, I want you to try out an experiment with me right now. I want you to look around this sanctuary, like physically. Turn around and look at who is here. Look around, see who's in this room with you. I want you to pick somebody in this room, preferably somebody that you don't know very well, or that maybe somebody who's not your best friend, or you don't live with them. So pick somebody, and now close your eyes. And I want you to bring that person that's in this room to mind. And as you focus on that person in your mind, I want you to consider this truth. That person might be, right now, in some way, as we all are from time to time, that person might be lost to God. And then consider this truth, that God is right now frantically seeking that person. That even though there are lots of other people in this sanctuary, even though there are billions of other people in this world, that God is willing to leave them all unattended for a while just to seek this one person that you are picturing in your mind. And God is willing to use every tool at her disposal to find this one person. And that God might even use you. And think about how that might change how you interact with this person today. Does that change the next words you might say to them? Or maybe you weren't even particularly planning on speaking to them today. Does that change your decision of whether or not to ask them by name how they're doing today, or at least to flash them a warm smile? Okay, now, keep your eyes closed and imagine that person again. Keep imagining that person. And consider this truth, that you yourself may be, in some way right now, lost to God. And that God is right now frantically seeking you. And even though there are lots of other people in this sanctuary, and there are billions of other people in this world, that God is willing to leave them all unattended for a while just to seek you. And God is willing to use every tool at her disposal to find you, including perhaps this person right here that you are thinking of. Think about how that might change how you respond to that person today. About how willing you might be to listen to what they have to say to you. To overlook whatever faults or fears may come between you, and to open yourself to their gifts. Now you can open your eyes. I encourage you to try that out from time to time when you're sitting in a cafe or at the gas station or even at home watching the news. Look at the people that you can see and think about them in that way. And see how it changes the way you interact with folks. When you remember that you might be the one called upon to help God find them. Or that they might be the one called upon to help God find you. I want to end today by saying this. This week, as fears and discrimination against Muslim sisters and brothers have dominated the news leading up to September 11th, I think we got a good look at our nation. And I think that we could not help but notice the truth that our country right now is quite lost. That 9 years ago, we fell to the ground with the towers in Manhattan, and since then we have been buried under layers of carelessly tossed hatred, the settled dust of despair, and the messy violence of enemy-making. We are lost. Our better selves, our loving, diverse, free, just selves are barely visible in the confusion. We are lost. searching for us, frantically searching for us to become the beloved community that God knows we can be. And I also believe that God is pulling out all the stops and is issuing an emergency appeal today, a call for help from each and every one of us, pleading, "My children, please help me find this nation that is lost." And I believe that we will answer the call. May it be so. Amen.